I pivoted to be more authentic and my numbers went down. But my money went up and my happiness went up.
What's up, beautiful beings? Welcome to another episode of the podcast. Today we have Amanda Bucci, who is a business consultant, an energy and alignment coach, an influencer, and the founder of the Entrepreneurial Archetype Quiz. We dive into all things social media and really from a perspective of alignment and how to show up authentically, vulnerably, and in a way that's true to you, that connects to other human beings. I really love this conversation and I think you're going to enjoy it too.
Welcome, my love. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be here with you and your community.
Yeah, we were just having some good giggles before we hit record. It's always a good sign. So strap in, folks.
We're here. Let's go.
Yeah, you're in for a ride. I always like to kind of start with this question, and it's a big question. So
let's go.
Just go wherever your spirit feels called in this moment, because it changes, particularly as women, I think, moment to moment. But who is Amanda?
Great big question. I love that. Amanda is love, first and foremost. So I had a friend ask me a question one time and they asked, do you know what your name means? And I Googled it. I looked up, what does Amanda mean? And it means worthy of love, which is really fun and beautiful. So if you've never looked up the meaning of your name, that's a really fun exercise. But it's so cool because I feel like...
And that's one of my favorite dinner party questions.
That's
is
a great thing.
What's the meaning of your name?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
great icebreaker. Really fun. Helps you get to know the person, even just like energetically and spiritually. And I think it's so cool that when you get a name as a kid and later on in life, you're like, you couldn't be named anything else but this. And I just love the power of names. So yeah, Amanda is love first and foremost. I'm a Cancer sun and lots of other things, Aquarius moon and Libra and all this stuff. But I've been told by people that I have this like warm, nurturing energy, that I really always am looking to make people feel loved and seen and held and witnessed. And I'm the person that you call for support. I'm the person that like hypes you up and helps you see yourself and helps you amplify yourself. And I just love to see people win. Whenever I have a friend that gets on social media or does something cool in their life, I'm like, I could cry of happiness just seeing how you are choosing to express yourself and how you're choosing to be courageous in your life. So yeah, I just love people. I love seeing people win. I love seeing people be themselves. And that's really what I've come to learn on my spiritual journey. That's like some of the deepest codes within me that I'm here to share. So great question.
She's an amplifier. I love that. Yes, yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, speaking of this like celebration of people's expression, I know a lot of the work that you do in the world is supporting people in how to have that like authentic online presence and kind of overcoming the fear and the self-doubt that gets in the way of showing up authentically online. It's like a big, like, what does that even mean? Like, where do people begin?
It's such a big question, right? And that's why I wrote my book Followed, which came out this past year. It's been so great.
Congrats.
And thank you so much. It's been so fun to have it. And I've been a content creator online for a decade now, back when 2014, and you can post pictures of your salad and it was fine and you could get followers and it was just so funny, like the funny, older versions of social media. But even after a decade, I'm still finding different layers of myself to bring online. And I've done so many things. I've had a YouTube channel that has 25 million views on it. That was like the 1.0 version of me, so many versions of me ago that I have completely let go of. It was when I was in the fitness industry. And then I've built versions of my business that I no longer resonate with. I have had a podcast that has 8 million downloads that I stopped, and I've redefined myself and figured out more of who I am. And every part of my social media has really been this playground for me to see how can I take the person that is Amanda and turn that into the brand that is Amanda Bucci, like at Amanda Bucci that people follow. And what does that actually mean? What does that look like? And it's such an unraveling, because we are all figuring out who we are in real time, especially if you're on a journey of doing that and you're constantly, self-awareness and how can I understand myself as a sexual being, as a business owner, as a relational being? Where do I want to live? How do I want to show up as? What are the dark parts of me? What are the amazing parts of me? And what makes me special? And all of these questions are generally happening right in the background as you're trying to be a consistent, regular, clear, like personal brand or business owner that really requires consistency, regularity, reliability, and like steadfastness. So often they oppose each other in a really big way. So I found that personally quite fascinating. I was like, that is wild. Like, why is nobody talking about this? Because so much of what we go on, what happens behind the scenes in our personal journeys is, kind of completed by, all right, now I'm going to bring this out into my brand. And there is this sense of like, once we are taking that, wisdom and experience into the online space, we've completed versions of our journey. But I know I've had so many conversations with content creators of all kinds, and everybody goes through this. Everybody is always constantly navigating, all right, I have typically made content in this way for a really long period of time. And if you're anything like me or even you or other people that have had multiple iterations of themselves online, you often have this moment, depends on how fast you grow and how many versions of yourself you let go of and reinvent yourself into over periods of time. But you have this moment with yourself where you're like, I don't think I need to make content like that anymore, or I don't want to run this program anymore, or I don't want to be viewed in this box that I have created for myself that now people perceive me as anymore. I'm so much more than this, but I've only shown this because either that's all that I knew or that is what I was told to niche down into and get really focused and simple and organized. But we are not focused, simple, and organized as beings. We're multidimensional, we're layered, we're all the things. So I always find that fascinating. And you asked where to start. I always say start with what your intuition is guiding you in terms of your journey in this moment. So whenever I guide clients, I work with people in business and brand and relationships. But whenever I guide clients, I always like to get a lay of the land of what are currently your biggest challenges and your biggest roadblocks and your biggest growth journeys that you're really feeling into. That's what you focus on right now, because that's going to be your current best revealer of information.
Yeah, 100%. It's like you never run out of something. And I'll often share that too. Like, I have to come back to that for myself. If I'm ever like, what do I want to share right now? It's like, well, what's real? Like, what am I experiencing? Yeah. What's life teaching me? How am I getting my ass kicked potentially by life right now? Like, what's working? Or it's like these universes that each of us are so full and so rich. And I think that that's something I see a lot, is this like idea of should, like where you are isn't enough. Like what you're experiencing isn't somehow enough, that it has to be something different, or the looking out at what other people are doing. And I've so fallen victim to that. It was so amazing hearing you talk about all the iterations, because it's like I started my social media journey super like messy, raw, vulnerable, doing Facebook Lives when that was a thing every sunrise. I fucking like cried my eyes out on Facebook Live about breakups. Like it was just like super raw and people loved it. And I would write like really erotic poetry about fucking God and like just, just like going for it. And then I kind of like homogenized myself a little bit. Like as I grew, I was like, oh, well, I've got these like corporate clients interested. I better like clean my shit up. And, like went into this much more like yoga, mindfulness, like the things, the practices that I really believed in and were a part of my life. But like who I was, I kind of like felt like I had to water it down. And then, I got to a point eventually, exactly as you described. I was like, yes, she's nailing it. Where I was like, I have to break out of this fucking box. Like, this isn't who I am. And it's like, I came full circle and I'm like back to writing erotic poetry and just like getting super messy. But how do you support people to build the courage to do that? Because I think I have a lot of people say like, yeah, but that's like to be messy online. And you don't have to like air all your dirty laundry, but do you know what I mean? Like to vulnerable, that's a better word. To just like fucking show people where you're at. Like, how would you suggest people start to kind of get the courage to really reveal wherever it is that they are?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And, you know, even like you sharing in your early days, it was easy for you to be vulnerable. I had the same experience. I was crying and sharing everything. And like, there was just no filter. And like you said, like as I grew, I first and foremost also thought that I had to be more professional and look more professional and be taken more seriously. And I also got jaded a little bit of, some of the things that came into my comment section where people would start to criticize and like take my vulnerability and turn it into something that was harmful or judgmental or harmful, hurtful. Those are the words that I just mixed up.
It was
keep that
intended to be heartful, but
heartful, yes. But all to say, I got jaded and scared. And when I was about 25, I had my first ever like cancellation moment, and I partnered with somebody, and their language on their website was all about healing your relationship with food, and it wasn't really popularized at that point. And some people in the eating disorder community was calling forward like some of this language is problematic and like it really needs to be this, but it wasn't a kind call out. It was like, I'm gonna call the police on you, like you shouldn't be doing this. And there was like a 3-day hate train. And I had a very big fitness brand where I had 60,000 people watching my videos 3 times a week on YouTube. So that was it was a lot of eyeballs. It was like a lot of energy.
Not nothing.
It's not nothing. It's definitely not nothing.
That's a lot. There's a lot of energy.
And that's, I think, what a lot of people are scared of experiencing is all that energy on them, all of those eyeballs on them, all of those feelings of being perceived inaccurately or incorrectly or being misunderstood. And ultimately, we have such a deep instinct around belonging and feeling like we belong in places. And we have this deep instinctual fear of being kicked out of the tribe or community or being exiled. And we so often just operate from that place of like, I'm going to be as likable as possible. I'm going to be as palatable as possible. I'm going to be as watered down as possible, so I don't have to deal with that feeling. So like we have both experienced, especially as women, we have that added layer of societal be this but not that, but less this and less that, and all of the things that women have to navigate. So in the journey within yourself of finding the courage to bring a part of yourself on social media that you are aware will potentially create that experience for you where you're going to be judged, criticized, maybe looked at differently by people. I always say that these journeys are parallel, your business and brand journey and your personal journey. So let's just say you have...
Of course. How could it be separate?
It's not separate at all. So it's wherever you're at in your own personal journey of knowing yourself and anchoring in your clarity about like your unwavering sense of self. And all of the places that you become emotionally dysregulated and become fearful, and you use those coping patterns of fight or flight or fawn or freeze in situations like that, are just revealing information to you about what your nervous system is able to handle at this time, right? It just paints a picture, and there's no judgment, there's no good, bad, right, or wrong. It just starts painting the picture for you about this is how my system is interacting with this experience. So if you just remember that your system is very much so valid in its coping mechanisms based on your past, based on society, based on all of that stuff, and you're just here to gather the information of like, all right, my highest vision for myself is that I will be able to be fully authentic online. I will not water myself down. I will not become another copycat version of everybody else that I see. I'm going to share these stories. I'm going to feel that self-expression and be met by my community. And I'm going to really have that like expanded version of my brand. How do I have to walk myself through these triggers, these fears, these energies, and these sensations so I can create safety within myself to get less swayed by them? I'm expanding my window of tolerance for what not only I can handle, but how I hold myself through it, the support systems that I have, the boundaries that I set. And it takes time to do that. But if you choose that, if you recognize the journey that is ahead of you in this particular arena, that's what you have to do. And that's what I've found to be 100% true for everybody that I've spoken with, is the people that allow themselves to be really seen are either like very naive and just getting into social media and they don't know and they're not jaded yet, or they've done the work on themselves to feel really anchored in who they are, and knowing that when someone says something that does not align with their truth of what they know about themselves and their integrity and their heart and their soul, they will not get swayed by it.
Yes. And isn't that such a spiritual practice? Like,
daily.
It really is. Because when I hear you talk about like having that like cancellation experience, I think that's a lot of people's worst fear.
Absolutely.
Is like, I'm going to get canceled, you know? And can we speak to that a little bit? Like, what does canceled even really mean? Like, I think we all have this, like, let's all get on the same page, at least in this conversation, what we're talking about, what that means. And how do you, as you say, with the nervous system, walk yourself? How did you walk yourself through and out of that experience to kind of like Phoenix rise from the ashes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Through absolutely. A lot of people's worst fear.
Totally. And it is kind of that pinnacle of being exiled, right? So in terms of cancellation, yeah, exactly. It's that like terrifying, I don't want that to happen. I'm going to do anything I can to avoid it. So cancellation.
But then it waters your brand down.
Right. Exactly. And then your power is given to all of those people that are potentially going to say stuff about you. And it's real. Like it's reputational damage. It is like, there is this thing that happened to me and that happens to a lot of people that go through what is experienced as a cancellation, which is really just a group of people that, you know, initial couple people start to say something and then it becomes this like group think, like I'm agreeing, I'm having a conversation about it, I'm also a part of the conversation, and you become a topic of conversation where people actively try to either destroy your reputation. From their end, people that are doing the cancellation are typically doing it because they feel like something you're doing is harmful or wrong or bad, and you deserve a consequence. And I wrote in my book, and my book followed, there's a chapter called Critics, Haters, and Trolls, Oh My. And I really get into the depths about the relationship between a content creator and a content consumer. And there really is a power dynamic there. So if you think about, you're a creator, you have a lot of followers, and you're doing something that someone perceives as harmful, even if it's not, even if they don't have the full story, even if they're misperceiving you or whatever. If they perceive you as harmful, the thing that they can do to get power back, and, you know, all these things that we do in terms of politics and like power struggles in the world and, you know, men versus women, people find a voice through their comment section or the comment section of someone else, through their ability to add their voice to a conversation to do what they think is right and just. Obviously, as you know, your community knows this, many people also, we all do this, project our own experiences onto people. So you're getting met with like, if you go through like a big cancellation like I did, which was really like, again, Twitter, I haven't been on Twitter since, really. Like, I have stopped making content on Twitter as a result of this, because I was like, I don't feel safe in this platform and I could get back on it. But, you know, now there's threads and stuff. But there was like 3 days straight where people were just like going into the threading of like, I'm adding to this conversation, and they started talking about my body and my boyfriend and the content that I make, and like all of these like nitpicking about my personality, and like not just the topic at hand, but they started getting really ugly and like, you know, going for the jugular kind of thing. And in that experience.
How was that for you?
Terrible. It was awful.
Experience that.
Yeah, I wanted to quit. I wanted to get off social media. I was like 25 years old too, 26. And it was just, you don't feel like you have any power or control about what people start to think about you. And that can be extremely emotionally dysregulating when you have a version of yourself, especially if you're a recovering people pleaser like I was, where people not liking you ultimately is this like extremely triggering experience, and it hits your nervous system in all the worst ways. But yeah, you feel like you have no control over what people say about you, think about you, feel about you. And it feels like all of these like misconceptions of who you are and your identity and your sense of self and like your heart and all that stuff are like anchored into the internet. Like just, they're always going to live there. And there are going to be people that watch it and just believe it. And that's who you have become in their head because they don't have a relationship with you. They don't really know you. They're very happy to view you as a villain now. And like any content creator is really like a character or an archetype in someone else's world who follows them. It is, you can kind of shapeshift to whatever they need you to be in a way, depending on the things that get said about you or the things that really hit them in a certain way, or if you say something that is out of the norm and they're like, oh, this person's the worst, I'm gonna unfollow them. I'm sure you've had people comment like unfollowing on your stuff and you're like, cool.
Well,
great.
It's also super interesting how like I've even had people be like, oh, I just loved when you shared about like that you had this experience, and I'm like, I never shared that. I never had that experience, but like that's what they got from some piece of content. Like it's like people really just hear what
selective hearing
or read or experience. Yeah, like they just, and sometimes it's like they'll totally insert something that like never happened, and it's like, well, I'm glad if it's a positive experience. Amazing, so glad that was helpful.
Totally.
It's wild.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yes.
So oh my god, so like you said, I definitely went on a journey of trying to disarm my triggers, trying to get back to a place of feeling like I could just go be myself online again and feel safe online again. And in an intimate relationship, you get the opportunity to share your triggers with a partner or a friend, and then you guys can repair together and you can rebuild trust together. With your community online, you don't get that. No one gives that to you.
No.
You just have to give it to yourself, right? You have to find a way to come back to this space that is no longer safe to your nervous system.
And that's one of the curses of being a leader. And I don't maybe want to call it a curse, but one of the challenges, let's say, and something that if you are a leader, you just have to get used to. And I'm sure anyone who's a parent knows this. When it's going well, you very rarely get the praise. But if it goes wrong, you will it's all on you.
Totally.
So, so it's like, there's that, as you say, that ability to self-regulate, to self-soothe, even in the face of like, wow, what a profound initiation of like, these people are literally gathering in numbers to intentionally damage me, hurt me. Like, as you were saying, like not even talking about the thing anymore, like you as a person, talking about your body, your relationship, like, whoa, people be crazy. But like going for you and for you, and you were only 25, you said like, whoa, to go through the initiation, to stand in the fire and say, okay, I know who I am. I'm going to come back to my truth, and to come back, my love, and still be sharing content, because I think that would be enough for a lot of people to just be like, I'm fucking done.
Totally. Yes.
I think it's like a Tim Ferriss question, or it might be some I think it's a Tim Ferriss question, but it's like, how is the worst thing that happened to you actually the best? And so I'm curious, like, maybe this is not the worst thing that happened to you. I'm sure you've been through a lot, but how is this really hard thing that happened to you turned out to be a blessing?
Yeah.
Like, how did you rise through that?
Like you said, the initiation into leadership was really big. And I think one of the biggest things that I really learned from that experience is how to view people's perceptions of me as fairly separate from my sense of self and my identity. And in the beginning, when I was building my brand, I get all this validation, all of this positive feedback, all of this like, I love you, you're awesome, thank you for this, and just like all the good. And, your ego eats it up. And you're like, great, if they're saying it, it must be true. And you don't really think about that consciously. But once you have a bunch of people saying the opposite, you really start to get a clearer picture of how you view yourself. And if you don't have a strong sense of how you view yourself, either one of those things is going to sway you. So I really found that was really such a large initiation into truly developing a strong sense of knowing who I am, because that's completely necessary in leadership. You have to decouple other people's perceptions of you from how you know yourself. So if anyone is wondering, how do I actually do that? Obviously, it's easier said than done. Obviously, like I still get affected by things sometimes, right? But the tools that I've developed in my nervous system, number one, I by default have now a very strong sense of self and a very strong understanding of my heart, my integrity, the actions that I do that consistently give me the evidence that I am showing myself that I am who I say I am. I live that, I embody that. And every single time that something like that comes in, I'm like, great, if it's going to hit me in a certain place, that there's still something within me that I get to solidify. But for the most part, things just roll off my shoulder now, which is really cool because they don't land in my system as true or potentially true, or I, don't trust myself fully in that area. I've built that self-trust. So whenever something hits you, go to your journal and be like, what is coming up for me? What is this revealing to me about my relationship with myself? Cool, right?
Yes.
And the other thing is really just building energetic boundaries and standards for what I am willing to allow in my space with people, right? So on social media, it can feel like people can just do whatever, but you can set both energetic boundaries of like, I don't receive that. I do not allow that. I am not going to take that on. That is not mine. That is yours. That is not going to penetrate my space and ultimately affect my day. Right? So how do you really decide for yourself, what am I going to allow to completely derail my day and take me away from my mission, my work, my clients, my community, my relationships, my self-care, my energy for myself? And is it really worth it? Or like, can I use it as an opportunity to grow? Like, take all of that shit as an opportunity to just become more powerful.
Yes. I love that. I had my friend, Sa D. Simone. I don't know if you follow him.
I know him.
He's incredible
I love him.
Content creator. Yeah, Sa. Yes.
He's great.
So when I was on the Mark Hyman podcast, I had like all of a sudden just an influx of people witnessing me and hate, like way more hate than I'd ever experienced. And I was like, like weird shit, like look at how she's touching her shoulder while she talks. She's trying to be suggestive and just like, what a slut. Like just such weird shit that I was like, what? And like getting deep in the comment section, just like, oh God, wow, never received so much hate in my life. And also a lot of love and connected with new clients and retreat participants. It was beautiful, but I was just like, oh my God. And I remember Sa said to me, he was like, like you're saying, like let most of it roll off your back. And there may be a few things in there that can be growing points that do reflect something that feels hard to hear or, and I was like, wow, that's such a beautiful point of like, exactly as you're saying, can I look at what's here? And if it's written in a way that's like just totally outside of how you would ever let anyone speak to you in normal life, then access to you is a privilege. It's not a right. It is your space. You can block people, you can delete people, you can say goodbye. But if it's just someone like sharing a different opinion or disagreeing with you or pointing something out, and it's like, it might be hard to hear, but like feedback is good. So it's like, using that to be like, okay, like, is there something that I could look at here? And I love what you're saying about like the nervous system stuff as well. Like what is triggering, to be able to like look at that and be like, is this reflecting something that I am worried about in myself, or something that a negative self-concept that I'm holding of me? And I think the other thing that I want to like highlight that you brought up that was super important is this idea of, if you're really attached to the validation, then the negativity is going to hurt more. I think, have you read the book, The Courage to Be Disliked?
I haven't. No, I should get that.
Oh, yes. I think you would love it. It's a brilliant book. And he kind of talks a little bit about this in that book, this idea of like letting go of attachment to people saying nice things about you and validation, and people saying negative things about you, and kind of what you're talking about, like, can you rest in the truth of who you are moment to moment? And of course, when we love people and they're truly seeing us and seeing into our souls and reflecting that beauty, or seeing us and seeing how we're impacting them and reflecting that challenge, that shadow, it's like, yeah, we want to take that feedback. But strangers on the internet are not going to be necessarily the most reliable, soulful mirrors. Yeah. And I do think we've talked a lot about like uncoupling from the negativity, but like, how do people listening start to uncouple from that chasing the validation? Like, I need the likes, I need the positivity. Like, where would someone start with that?
That's such a great question too, because it can be so addicting, and so, you know, it feels so good. I had a client recently, and she was like, she had a couple videos go viral, and she was like, how do I deal with this energy? Because I feel really connected to it, and I feel like I want to just like keep looking at it and keep getting it, and like the dopamine, and like it feels so good, and it's like kind of overwhelming. And if you've ever had something go viral, you know what that feels like. I've totally had that, where I'm just like checking the comment section and I'm like, oh, this is great. I feel awesome. And I feel like it's a similar process. It's just more on, like, I'd like to think of things in terms of sensation, right? Like, how do I deal with this sensation?
Yes.
And is the sensation going to be negatively affecting me at some point? And how can I come back to a sense of groundedness? Like, anything that's really flighty and high and like high energy, and, you know, that like, oh my God, ecstatic energy, it's going to come down eventually. So often what can happen is people will feel really low afterwards. Like, there's this big expansion and then there's a contraction. So I always like to think about, in terms of the sensational energetic side of things, how can I ground myself? How can I come back to my center and just really ground myself in the present moment and be in my body, and like bring the energy down and bring the energy into the lower chakra centers? And then there's like psychologically and emotionally, it's so helpful to notice that your psychological connection or attachment to the validation is also something within you. It's also some sort of, you know, urge to get that validation of who you are. And I don't think it's always a bad thing. I think validation is super supportive, to, especially for someone who's like, okay, I really need to feel more strong in my brand, and like getting good feedback is really helpful, especially from people that really know you and people that are clients, and getting, you know, putting something out there and getting a client to sign up is like, oh, people want this. People are like, there's something here for me. But it can become dangerous when we get too attached to, all right, well, people want this version of me, and now I can't take that away from them because I'm going to lose all the validation. Or, I mean, when I pivoted from fitness to business, I lost hundreds of thousands of followers. I was, you know, making courses about growing your Instagram, and I would get people like, but you've lost so many Instagram followers. And like, I'm over here losing 1,000 followers a week, but gaining 900 followers a week. So it only looks like I'm losing. So the numbers piece of it all, like the likes and the comments, I started to just get really, you know, disillusioned by all of that. And just like all of these illusions broke down, because all of a sudden my path was no longer linear. Social media, like numbers wise, it was no longer I'm growing. People like me more and more and more. I'm getting, you know, higher numbers, and like my photos are getting this amount of likes. I pivoted to be more authentic, and my numbers went down. But my money went up and my happiness went up, and eventually things started to even out and like started to rebuild a new audience. And I was like, these numbers are not just a reflection of how many people like you. They're a reflection of where you're at in your brand journey, but no one really knows what that is but you. So I like think
and
about,
sometimes
like, get
it's
more
not
objective.
about more is better.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. It was just like what you were saying, like it's not necessarily more is better. I have friends who have really successful businesses and they don't have a huge amount of followers, but the followers that they do have, their content is super relevant to them.
Right.
And it's really clear that they provide value for those people. So what I'm hearing you say is like the numbers may have gone down, but the match between you and the person following you, because you're more in your dharma and your authenticity, is a higher match. So then you're seeing that reflected in actually better sales.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And it's so cool to pay attention to that. In my book, I also talk about the 9 stages of personal brand development. And it's really about like the early stages is you know, you're first online, you're figuring out who you are. Maybe you don't know who you are as a content creator yet. So you're like copying structures from other people and like figuring out your colors and whatever. And eventually you start to hit a stride where people like it, and it's landing, and you're relevant to the right people and they're signing up for stuff, and you thought you figured it all out. And then most of us hit some sort of plateau, whether the market changes or the way that social media work starts to change or we change. And the way that we were once doing it is no longer working either for us or for the algorithm or whatever. So we have to reinvent ourselves.
Yes.
And in that reinvention, you start realizing, oh, I can't be attached to these numbers because I know I'm going in the direction of my dharma and my authenticity and my alignment, but it doesn't look like that on paper. Doesn't matter.
Yes.
Right? It doesn't actually matter. So the kind of like final stage is what I kind of think of as like transcending your attachment to the numbers specifically, because they start to just mean different things to you than they once did.
Yes.
And you start to realize it just wasn't really what it looked like.
Yes. And I so resonate with that, because sometimes, you know, I'll put a post up and my barometer for posts are, do I stand behind this? If someone was to see this like piece of content, is this a reflection of what I believe? Does it feel true? Does it feel valuable to me? And if yes, you know, sometimes I post a piece of content feeling that, but knowing this isn't the type of content that's going to get quote unquote numbers, but I stand by it.
Yeah.
And I think it's valuable. And those pieces of content sometimes will be the things that bring you a new client who really connected with that piece of content, even though it wasn't viral. So I really agree with that. Like just letting go of the numbers and really just standing behind the content, which is hard to do if you're attached to the numbers, because then you're trying to play a game of like what works versus creating from your soul. Like ultimately that's what social media is. It's like a living art gallery where you get to like create whatever the fuck you want and like put it into the world. That's kind of amazing.
I totally agree. And I think that the creators that take that approach are the ones that feel most alive anyway, like the ones that you want to keep following and the ones that are like always surprising you and like putting like more artistic, creative, fun, light, fresh, interesting stuff out there, where they're either not attached to virality specifically or they're not attached to everything being about money and business. And I love following accounts like that, and I love approaching my social media that way as well, because it can be so easy to get into this formulaic, you know, this is what I know the formula is for like a hook and a carousel, and like then it's going to lead to the pitch, and then it's going to do this, and like this is the formula for a viral video. And you know, I've made a lot of money in my business, and I've also, you know, had the like high visibility. I know how to get views, and like they're different styles of things. But either way, when you just get too attached and connected to like it has to all fit within either one of those formulas, you can lose yourself. You can lose, you know, the parts of social media that you just want to be like, I want to share a poem today, or I just want to tell a story.
Yes.
And then that's like what I kind of feel are the, like, it's like the glue between your feed. It's like all of the stuff that makes it really feel whole and complete and like fit together and, you know, feel, like I said, alive and connected to the people that want to understand the nuances of you rather than just the value you can provide or like the information that you have. And every single time I get feedback from one of my longtime followers and people that have followed me for a long time, it's never necessarily about a specific piece of content that I put out there, but they always say, I so appreciate you sharing your journey. Watching you has been the most helpful thing to me. And it's never about a specific piece of content.
Yes, people follow you for what you do, not what you say you do.
Yeah.
They're
How
like,
you are, how you show up, what you
you know,
embody, like what energy they experience from you, and just like knowing the full person, just like anything in life, like in any of your relationships, whether it's romantic or friendships, you just want to know the person and their authenticity. And yes, sometimes that will trigger you, and there'll be a mirror for you and like all the things, but that's what I think makes, life feel alive.
Oh my gosh, this conversation has felt so alive for me, my love.
Me too.
I can't believe the time flew. I think what we'll need to do is get you back on for a round 2, because there's also so much relationship stuff that I would love to dive into with you. So I think that we'll absolutely have to do a round 2. But for anyone listening who's just, feeling the aliveness of your approach, I mean, I'm going to offer step 1. Go buy your book, follow.
Yes.
Step 1. Is there any other steps you would invite people listening into if they're really wanting to, step into more authenticity, more courage, more truth online?
I love that. Yeah, definitely get followed. That's just going to be like your Bible, And in terms of their next steps, like what you can really start doing is I would pick one thing that feels a little edgy for you and create a project for yourself. Who do I have to become? What do I have to create and expand into for me to say this thing online next? And if you feel a little funky in your stomach and you kind of want to throw up, you've probably landed on the right thing. That's my challenge for everybody.
I love that. Yes, I love this so much. And let us know how you go. Where can people find you and follow you and stay connected with you and your work?
Yes, you can go to Instagram at Amanda Bucci is where most of my stuff is. I've got some free downloads and helpful things for you. And you can go to my website, amandabucci.com as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your wisdom, my love.
Thank you for having me. I so appreciate you.